Is there anything you would have done differently?
We reported a true story.
Our colleague Brian Williams is back in Kuwait City tonight after a close call in the skies over Iraq.
Controversial Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh and questions about Kavanaugh's drinking in the past.
Sean Hannity, come on up, Sean Hannity.
Today, Andrew Cuomo is having a moment.
Hi, I am Chris Stirewalt.
And I am not Eliana Johnson.
That is for sure. Welcome to Ink-Stained Wretches, where we break down what's going wrong and what's going right with the American news media. Oh, Wretchos, what a treat I have in store for you. Here's what you don't know about Timothy P. Carney. Yes, he is my colleague at the American Enterprise Institute. Yes, he is a learned scholar. Yes, he is the author of a new book that we will talk about. Yes, he is an expert on things about families, vibrant cultures, healthy societies, and all of that jazz. But what I know about Timothy P. Carney is that he is an ink-stained wretch, that at his very core, down there with, I assume, several potatoes and some incense, is an ink-stained wretch. Because I got to know Tim when I was new in Washington and working at the Washington Examiner, and Tim came aboard writing a column. Were you I shouldn't say just a columnist,
Yep.
but you were a columnist.
I was a columnist.
And the best thing, the thing that I like many things about you, but the thing that I liked best about you was you came into the newspaper business. Where had you been before?
I had been working for Bob Novak.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
The Prince of Darkness. So you came into the daily newspaper business with an attitude of like, I want to learn how to really have mastery of writing a column. I want to really be a good columnist and a good newspaper person. And you took to it with such enthusiasm and you did it. And it was really cool to see.
No, it was fun. And what was great about the Examiner newsroom, there was a handful of people who were, I just call them my rabbis. I think you were my first rabbi. Any advice I needed about either how to handle an editor or about how to, deal with an issue in a column, whatever it was. First, it was Chris Stirewalt, and then he left. And then I don't know whether you would say my mentors or mentees went downhill from that. Julie Mason, Bill Myers.
Julie is Julie, who has a great. She's actually been in your seat. She's actually guest hosted this podcast once. Julie is. I talked to her on her Sirius XM show just this week, and she remains an absolute delight. And we both had the opportunity to work for Stephen G. Smith, and one of the things that is lacking for a lot of young journalists today in this deconstructed era is the gift of a really gifted line editor.
Oh, yeah.
And Stephen Smith, and I've written about it in my book, but it is a real privilege to work for a great editor, because the difference is I'm a bad editor. I have a hard time retaining the voice of the writer, right? When I go in to edit something, I start doing surgery on it and the patient dies on the table, and then I try to resuscitate it. Stephen's gift for pulling the best out of you and doing that's what a good editor really does.
And I would read the piece. I would know it was now down to the proper length.
Yeah.
And I couldn't tell what he had changed.
Yes.
I actually had to go out of my way and read the draft side by side to learn from him, because it wasn't a giant battle axe. It was this little scalpel, and it read like me.
And it was a violet pen. It was a little purple pen that he would go through. And sometimes you'd be elated because he always worked on paper. He worked on hard copy. And you'd be elated because it would only look like it had been mauled by a panther. And then sometimes you would see, and it would be all sliced to ribbons. You say, "Oh!" But the gift of good editing is something lacking. It is lacking, and people should have more of it. So please find somebody with a good purple pen. Okay, now Tim, I'm going to walk you through your wretch experience today. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Are you ready
Yes.
to get wretched? Okay, so first up, it's time for our front page. Now, I brought in, it's a choose your news situation. We're recording this on Thursday, and the big political news story in the 2024 election today is both Donald Trump and Joe Biden are visiting the southern border. NBC News headline, Trump and Biden collide in split-screen trips to the border with immigration in the spotlight. Fox News has a different take. Biden's border visit lands on one of the least trafficked towns while Trump is headed into the thick of it. Now, I doubt that Donald Trump will actually be
in the thick
of it. I doubt he will be in the razor wire. I doubt he will be stringing razor wire at Eagle Pass. And let me just start with one of my pet peeves, which is, who cares? I know I'm supposed to care. Who cares who goes where? I don't care whether the president goes here or goes there. And here's the cop-out that the media uses. Here's the thing. And I'm guilty of it. I do it all the time, which is, well, but the optics, right? Mm-hmm. So the lives of people, and this related to it is, I detest the idea of the president as healer-in-chief or our great national father. I dislike that role of. I'm a Coolidge man. I dislike the idea.
He should be a distant, uncaring father.
Yes, he should be a remote New England Presbyterian who, one of my favorite jokes is about the Midwestern, we'll say Nebraska, we'll say the businessman from Nebraska who loved his wife so much he almost told her. But the idea of this performative emotive, and I get that part of it, but the cop-out on this kind of stuff is, I'm not saying he has to go, but the optics are that he has to go. And it's a way in which in the press, people say it's like the word controversial. Your controversial decision. Well, it's controversial in part because you're making it controversial.
Yeah, and I call it the meta media, when the media either praise or criticize a candidate for doing something that looks good.
Yes, exactly.
That's not our job. Unless we were just writing for, a trade publication for political operatives, then it would be interesting to say, well, he's going to the border. What are the optics? I remember Scott Walker used to get beat up because he wasn't always the smoothest talker. And the media would say he meant to say X, but he accidentally said Y. And they would make the whole story about that. And I would say, well, come on, this is really what the story is. And they say, well, we need to report on how he's doing as a politician, how his optics are. So when somebody just does a photo op, that's not going to actually give them any insight into how the border works. I absolutely agree that you're just sort of playing along in
yes,
in following them.
We got to see it with Ronnie D running for president, and Ron DeSantis, of course, came to the expected end of complaining about the coverage that he was getting at the end of his campaign after he had intentionally antagonized and shunned the press for all this time. He's like, how come I'm not getting better coverage from you terrible jackals who I hate and wish death upon? But we demand in the press to be lied to. We demand to be spun. We get
angry when they're not good at spinning us.
Right. How come you're not more effectively lying to me? You should be couching this in different language. So yes, that's what did you call it? The meta
media. They're reporting about how these people are handling the media.
Speaking of which, our next item is a beauty in that category, and quite useful in its own way. Adam Nagorny, writing for the New York Times, the Democratic taboo, airing concerns about Biden. So the story around how Democrats. So first, kudos to Nagorny for talking about it and doing a little meta on this phenomenon. And it was actually in the New York Times. It was Ezra Klein who sort of pierced the bubble on the. And I understand it's very hard for Democrats because on the one hand, you want to say, this is the way it is. The die is cast. So just shut up about it.
Yep.
And when I used to say about when David Axelrod would say what was wrong with Joe Biden, it's like, well, too late now, bro. He was your vice president. You're here voicing these concerns in an abstract way seems counterproductive. But the media problem about how to cover Joe Biden's decrepitude. Next week is the State of the Union. And I hate the institution of the televised State of the Union speech. I detest it with the white-hot passion of 10,000 Suns. It is a Woodrow Wilsonian, Lyndon Johnsonian I'm anti-harumph. But, of course, what will all the coverage be about, really, when you get down to it, about Joe Biden, which is, can he do it?
Can he do it? Can he stand for an hour and talk? And the fact is, this was basically ignored. And then a couple of weeks ago, we finally got it was interesting. I thought it was before Ezra Klein's piece. You finally got when that the prosecutor's document came out and said, we can't prosecute him because he's an old man.
Right.
That little elbow thrown by prosecutors who aren't going to bring charges love to throw elbows at the people they investigate. And that
put a little streak, put a little smear on it.
I first saw that from 3 different liberal reporters tweeting it out. And over the next 24 hours, what I discerned from the outside of major newsrooms was that they had wanted to write it. The people who were following him day to day were like, can I write about the fact that he doesn't know where the stairs are?
Yes.
And that the editors had said, no, this is not the story. This is not the story. So the second that you saw people at CNN and Washington Post, the second that they saw they had an excuse and an opportunity to write about his decrepitude, they did. So this is millennial reporters who are on the trail. All the evidence is they wanted to write about Biden and that they were reined in. And now they're trying to
they've been trying to put the toothpaste back in the tube and get people back to, yes, we know it's unfortunate, but we should shut up about it because it's good for Donald Trump.
It reminded me of when when did Tommy Thompson run for Senate? 2014.
2014. Yeah.
So I had a piece that I was writing about Tommy Thompson's sort of shameless shilling for people who were paying him. So he would get brought on the air as former HHS secretary, and he would say, well, what we really need here are drugs that address this problem, and one happens to be made by, whoever pharmaceuticals. Right. And I just thought it was absolutely embarrassing that he was doing that without disclosing. I wrote that column a little bit before the Republican primary. Something came up that was more interesting. Thompson wins the nomination, and then I run that column. The Republicans just nominated a pharma shill.
Yeah.
And I got a call from the NRSC, and this guy said, how does this help anything?
Right.
And I said, it's not my job.
Well, but see, you get to a key point, and this is something Brother Goldberg talks about frequently, and that I have, as you know, frequently encountered in my own vocational life, which is like, I thought you were on our side. Aren't you on our side? And it's like, no, I'm not. You don't want me on your side because you want to be able to trust the things that I'm saying. And if I'm on your side, you can't trust the things that I'm saying. And one of the big problems that we have in reporting, but especially in analysis, is if you start with if you prefigure into all your analysis, it must help this or that team win, then you cannot really do analysis.
Yeah.
Speaking of narrative management, Dylan Byers with The Scoop, ABC News President Kim Godwin sent a note to staff in which she called recent remarks by Donald Trump shocking and racist. These remarks are as racist as they come, she said. Now, these are, of course, Donald Trump's remarks about saying that black people like him better because he has been charged with felonies. And the actual Trump quote is, I got indicted a second time and a third time and a fourth time, and a lot of people said, because people are saying,
yes,
that's why the black people like me.
Which, again, is Trump borderlining on being an actually funny comedian.
Yes.
Which he does better than almost any politician.
The Dave Chappelle premise of Trump. You can't say that. I can say that. I'm a comedian. Let me do my job. You do your job. Just one first tedious note about political analysis, which is, if Donald Trump continues to improve with black and Hispanic voters, particularly men, he may do as well with non-white voters in 2024 as George W. Bush did.
Yeah.
Part of the part of the story about like what's going on with non-white voters and all of this obsession with non-white voters is we went through a very weird period in which Democrats nominated the first African-American presidential candidate ever, twice. And then the Republicans nominated the host of The Celebrity Apprentice, who celebrated Cinco de Mayo by talking about the great taco salad at Trump Tower. We had an anomalous period, and a lot of what's going on is just, and this is, I know, I stipulate internet, tedious, a reversion to mean, where black candidates, Nate Moore, you recently pulled up these numbers for us, but it's going back to where it's 12% of the black vote or something goes to the Republican candidate, as opposed to 4% when it's in the Obama-Trump era.
Yeah.
But anyway, the idea that the president of ABC News has to say, just so you know, just so you know, make no mistake, this isn't just race. These things are not just racist. They're as racist as you come.
Well, so part of it, tying these two things together, one is people in the media class, bourgeois values we're all brought up on. And one of the bourgeois values is don't say things that are racially insensitive. Don't make racial jokes in public, etc. Right. Don't say things that are a little bit racist.
Yes.
I think much of the electorate doesn't actually think that making bad racist jokes or racist comments is the same as racism. Right. Racism is refusing to hire somebody if he's black, while for us, racism would be telling a Dave Chappelle joke when you're not a black guy. Right. And so that's these comments that Trump makes that make me laugh because they reflect his sort of what at first strikes me as his idiocy, and then I say he's like the guy at the end of the bar.
Exactly.
You know, Chris, I do a lot of bar reporting.
Yes, you are.
And the guys at the end of the bar don't always follow the rules of sort of bourgeois ethics that you and I will follow on a day-to-day basis. And so the media thinks that saying racist things is racism. And I think the median voter, black, white, Hispanic, does not think that counts as racism.
Well, and eliminating the NFL had in its end zones, I don't know if they did this season or not, but for a period of time, they had a slogan in their end zones that said, "End racism." And it's like, probably not. We will probably not end racism, and that we will move into the sunny uplands of history in which people
the sweet meteor of death or the second coming of the Savior is going to end racism.
That is how we will stop having stereotypes. And so what the NFL should say in its end zone is be nice. Try to be nice to people. Can you try to be, that would be much better to say in the end zone, try to be nice, right? Because that's the human nature, as I say very often, undefeated. Human nature remains for 10,000 years, just crushing it. And the idea, I think, just as you say that, like, somebody's crazy uncle, he's always saying, he said the thing. That's what Trump is, a guy who they famously tried to nail on, saying if you don't have, I think it was like, if you don't have Jewish accounts, if you don't have Jewish people handling your money. And it was like, can you believe he said that? And many Jewish people were like, it's kind of funny. That's like, he shouldn't say, you shouldn't say that, but I get the joke. This is a good example of how absolutism of opposition creates more space for the alleged problem that we were talking about before we recorded. Shane Gillis, who recently hosted Saturday Night Live. Now, the story of Shane Gillis, for people who do not know, is that he got hired to work on Saturday Night Live, and then somebody found an old podcast in which he made I think lazy is the correct term for the joke, in which he was playing a character who was saying something racist, not being racist himself, about Asian Americans. And so he got Kevin Williamson. He got hired, and then they were like, no, you're making people upset. You have to leave. And then Saturday Night Live had Shane Gillis on to host, and he was very funny, and I think Shane Gillis is very funny. And what makes Shane Gillis an attractive comedian and why he's going up so far and so fast is the transgression, right? Yep. The fact that he's he's doing what comics are supposed to do, which is he's pushing you into, like, is this okay to laugh at? And he's taking the danger on for himself. You mentioned Chappelle. Lots of people do it. And Donald Trump is a comedian. That's the thing. Unfortunately, America, he is not just a comedian. He has an about even chance of taking control of the nuclear codes again. Okay, speaking of how racism makes people, how the attempts to eliminate racism make people stupid. What about the Black Vikings?
And the Black Popes.
And the Black Popes and the Asian female members of the SS which would have been a real, Himmler would have really been like, guys, did you not see the memo? I thought I was as clear about the master race as I possibly could be. From NPR, Google CEO Sundar Pichai told employees in an internal memo late Tuesday that his company's release of artificial intelligence tool Gemini had been unacceptable, pledging to fix and relaunch the service in the coming weeks. Last week, Google paused Gemini's ability to create images following viral posts on social media depicting some of the AI tool's results, including images of America's founding fathers as black. The Pope is a woman and a Nazi-era German soldier with dark skin. The tool often thwarted requests for images of white people, prompting a backlash online among who? Conservative commentators who accuse Google of anti-white bias. To me, I like this story because it is a good antidote to the AI is coming for all of us and will soon rule the world. And you're like, AI can't figure out what Nazis were, right? And certainly it points to problems about dependence on AI and overestimating the capability of AI, the idea that AI is going to make moral judgments for us, and it points to all of those things. But it also points to me of like, it's garbage in, garbage out. It's a computer program, and it only knows what it's been programmed to do.
So AI is trickier for programmers because they don't get to they get to program how it works, but then it goes out and it feeds on the whole ecosystem of the internet.
Yep.
And so they don't know what garbage is going in. And so
Right.
the early stages, I mean, you talk to people who are close to Silicon Valley, they say the early efforts to make this, the reason that Google was so far behind everybody in launching an AI is because the AI they came up with was racist. Either because of it finding racist content or just that it was actually harder to program something to look at images, and it had trouble telling the difference between seeing that black people were the same species as non-black people.
Right.
And so the AI wasn't smart enough to do that, again, failing to see what humans can see. And so that was a big part of their problem, is that they accidentally made a racist AI, and so then to try to make
that was one of the early things when ChatGPT came out.
Yeah,
was that the left was to reverse what NPR is saying, backlash online among liberal commentators that were like, this is racist, and I can't believe they said it. And this is a groupthink problem that newsrooms experience as well, which is if you have a bunch of people from the same point of view and they're deeply alarmed about the idea that they would produce something that would obtain backlash from their side. They're going to overcorrect from their side, and we're going to end up with Black Ben Franklin.
I thought that the bigger problem than Black Ben Franklin was the text prompts. And so I spent part of my wasted my weekend giving it parallel text prompts. Write me an argument in favor, or write me a defense of Ross Douthat's columns on abortion. Okay. I'm sorry, I cannot weigh into controversial matters. Okay, write me praise of Michelle Goldberg's columns on abortion. Boom, it does. No problem. So it was to me a very familiar problem, which is it was saying, well, no, I have a neutral reason for not doing this conservative thing, but then totally scrapping that neutral justification when the tables turn.
And what Facebook learned, what Google is learning here, what they all learn is this, which is it's better to avoid partisan siloing. It's better. Aspirational neutrality is superior, right? So it's not that the concern expressed frequently is that we're being reprogrammed by big tech, and there's truth. There's arguments about change the way we think. What invention has changed the way that we live and think more than Google in the past 30 years? Not much.
And you even used the verb reprogrammed, that our brains are being reprogrammed. That itself
is evidence of the effects of how the information age has rewritten our way of thinking and being. So that is certainly true. But it's also true that these are companies that want to succeed, and it's not good for business. And as Meta, their answer to, in 2016, they infuriated Democrats, right?
Yep.
So then for 2020, they're like, well, we're going to fix it. And Republicans were like, how dare you? How dare? And it was like, you know what we're going to do? We're not going to do this. we're going to pull back from the political space, and we're going to not do this because it's not in our business interest to do it. And I think this is a good example of how the market punishes people for taking sides.
Well, and that the sort of deaf, dumb, blind neutrality they want to do, the
Yes.
objective neutrality, is not possible in
Yes.
a lot of cases. And so if you guys remember, there were stories a couple years ago about how Zuckerberg actually invited conservatives
Yes.
to his house in Palo Alto. I was one of them. I got to go to his house.
What?
It's a nice house.
Yeah, I bet
It actually just looks like a regular, like, upper middle class house. It doesn't look like a billionaire
But there's
house.
a crypt full of
I didn't get to see the crypt.
Full of the brains of Leonardo da Vinci and others.
And I'll just say because the dinner was off the record, but I'll say what I said, which is you cannot accomplish neutrality that will look neutral to all 8 billion people in the world when in the United States we can't agree on whether or not men can get pregnant.
Right.
So there is no neutrality.
Well,
and so the whole idea of big tech trying to build this thing that for a whole audience will seem non-controversial, it's impossible.
Ask AI. Well, we recently had historians trying to rank U.S. presidents. Who's the best president? Who's the worst president? Okay, so was Franklin Roosevelt a good president?
On a neutral scale.
Was he a good president? And so you and I and Colin and Nate could spend the next 2 hours in a debate about the missed opportunities, the problems with the New Deal. We could talk about court packing. We could talk about his inspirational leadership during the Second World War. And we would say it's complicated, right?
Locking up Japanese people in camps.
Right. Internment camps. And we would like one of the things, a theme for me in recent months has really come home about the inability for people, and this is very present in the media, to hold competing ideas in tension, right? That it's like yes and yes, right? That it's not yes or no, it's yes, and they are in conflict, right? That we have a much harder time with good things in conflict than we do with the easier Manichaean. We'll just program it so that we'll have the right answer. Okay, but wait a minute, Tim. There are deeper problems with AI. There are much deeper problems with AI. And fortunately, the Washington Post is on the case. AI dream girls, in quotes, scare quotes, are coming for porn stars' jobs. AI will change adult entertainment forever. This is amazing. The next line. The risks for sex workers and the rest of us are profound. This is written by someone named Tatum Hunter. And the problem with AI, we didn't know, was that prostitutes and pornographic actresses and actors face disruption from the rise of artificial sex partners. So with the help from an angel investor he will not name, Jones hired 5 employees and a handful of offshore contractors and started building an image empire, trained on bundles of freely available pornographic images, as well as thousands of nude photos from Jones's old collection. Hey, whoa. Users create what Jones calls a dream girl, prompting the AI with descriptions of the character's appearance, pose, and seating. The nudes don't portray real people, he said. Rather, the goal is to recreate a fantasy from the user's imagination. The AI-generated images got better, the computerized sheen growing steadily less noticeable. Jones grew his user base to 50,000 people, many of whom pay to generate more images than 5 per day. Whoa, guys, take a break. Go touch grass. Wow, more than 5 a day. He said the power users generate AI porn for 10 hours a day. Seems good.
Jeez.
Seems like not a problem. So that I think that is the inarguable part of Tatum Hunter's claim in the piece about the more realistic and more satisfying pornography, or seemingly satisfying pornography becomes, the more dangerous it is as a trap for better directed human passions. The more interesting part of this piece is, what will it do to people who have sex for money? What will it do? What will happen, Tim, to all of the 17-and-a-half-year-old girls who will now miss out on the lure of easy money and drugs to have sex on camera in Florida motel rooms? What will happen to them?
It's just even the media euphemism of sex worker.
Yes.
in some ways, I kind of like it because it sounds so unappealing.
Yeah.
Like I'm going to go down
You're not
to
a courtesan.
Go down to the neighborhood in Miami where I can get some sex work done. Like that's unappealing enough. It hopefully would turn people off from it. But that idea of the euphemism there fits into this broader thing of sort of reducing everything to everybody's just, I mean, that in media we're knowledge workers or whatever, and teachers become educators. But doing that euphemism for prostitution and porn is particularly upsetting. But yeah, no, I mean, I think that Jones ought to be held up as an absolute villain. that should be the story. Here's this guy, and he's trying to ruin your son's lives, and in turn ruin your daughter's lives.
Yes.
And that's the story here. Not that some really desperate people will not be exploited in this way that they've been exploited for decades.
And another thing about pieces like this, just let me say, this is meta media in its own way. I'd like to write about porn. I'd like to write about sex. What if I wrote about? What if I made it a business story? What if I put another lens on it? And if you look at the art in this Washington Post piece, there's a lot of porny stuff in it, right? Mm-hmm. It's skanky ladies and stripper heels and all that stuff. So it's a way to say we're showing pictures of pornographic actresses, of sex workers.
Yeah,
I did come to start referring. I hated the term porn star when I had to write about Stormy Daniels, and I did settle on sex worker for Stormy Daniels because star, that if you're having sex with Donald Trump at a celebrity golf tournament in Lake Tahoe, I don't feel like you're a star. You're a star. An actress is wrong.
It's
right?
an overstatement. Yeah.
It's an overstatement. Not that it wouldn't probably take some real acting to convince the host of The Celebrity Apprentice that you are just thrilled at the chance to help him with his mulligan at Lake Tahoe. But anyway, Washington Post, way to go. Way to go. Way to go. You've done it again. Which, of course, brings us to our business page. It's time for the business news. How about how much money would somebody have to pay you to not work? What's your number that you need to not work?
Go on CNN specifically, or not work
to do nothing?
To do nothing.
Yeah. How much money do you need to just go away and not work?
I think $3 million. I would go away.
$3 million after taxes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
If you're netting out $3 million.
That buys me a house and pays my kids' tuition. So.
My number's a little higher, but yes, I think there's a number. You know what CNN is going to pay Don Lemon not to work? Don Lemon, $24.5 million American dollars to have sources exclusively tell The Wrap that Lemon, 57, has agreed to a separation deal with CNN for approximately $24.5 million, which would be the full complete pay from his final contract, which extended 3.5 years from his outing. The Wrap is told. Now, normally in your contract in television, I don't think I've ever had one of these. There's a non-compete. Mm-hmm. You can't, and you can't do anything else. Now, if I was CNN, this is mean, and I apologize in advance for saying it, but it is also true. If I was CNN, I would encourage Don Lemon to go compete. Work someplace else. Like, you need to go see what they're doing at MSNBC.
Get
Don.
out there.
You need to get out there and mix it up. Don't just sit on your laurels. Don't just do that. But the Don Lemon, you don't know this, but we tracked over the arc of CNN's bringing Don Lemon to the morning show. And it was bad news for Don Lemon, and it was bad news for CNN. Mm-hmm. Don Lemon could have persisted in his little-watched, primetime CNN crazy Don Lemon show, right? And they were like, why are we just leaving this guy on the sidelines? Let's get Don Lemon into the morning, and he's going to do the news, and he's going to talk with the news people, and he's going to do the stuff. And like 6 months later, he had opinions about when women are in the prime of their life, according to Google, and generally was awful. And people said, you have to go away. And Don Lemon, please enjoy all of your money.
Good for him.
Yeah, totally.
Yes.
And I want to tell News Nation right now, I will not work for a fraction of that. I am willing to go away and never be on television anywhere again for even less than that. I am definitely prepared for that kind of cash. Okay, other business story, and this is just me being the worst. Again, I continue in my march of being the worst today. Eliana's not here, so I have to pick up the slack. The Washington Post holds, and everybody does, lots of people do, these salons where they bring together. They use the threat and opportunity of currying favor with these influential news outlets to bring together newsmakers, people who are important, with sponsors, right? And they're selling access between these people and all this stuff. So the Washington, this one I have to just mention it. I don't need to say a lot, but Washington Post Live had a Money Talks event. Actually, it's happening this afternoon, Tim. We could still go. We're recording this Thursday. It's happening this afternoon. Experts examine how young Americans are navigating today's economic landscape, learning about financial solutions in online communities, and investing in their futures. Presented by Fidelity Investments. Okay, who can we see? Who will be there? Well, you can see Haley Sachs. She's the founder of Mrs. Dow Jones and Zillennial finance expert, the chief economist for ZipRecruiter, and an associate professor from the University of Kansas, and Ayanna Pressley. Now, Ayanna Pressley, for those of you who do not know, is a enthusiastic Democratic Socialist, squad member, hardcore, right? She is hardcore. AOC is a sellout,
yes,
compared to Ayanna Pressley, who has come to hang out with Fidelity Investments, has come to hang out with ZipRecruiter, has come to do this. And I'm just only flagging it to be a prude.
Well, and a lot of left-wing feminism ends up becoming sort of girl boss workism.
Yes.
Corporate workism. That the way you're going to show it to the man is by building up your 401k, working 60 hours a week, and not having time for friends or family. And so it fits perfectly into, and the sort of hyper-individualism, materialism of a lot of modern feminism. Not all of it. A lot of modern feminism is like pro-family, pro-moms, but I think that the squad brand of it is not. It's girl boss corporate workism.
You don't know this, but every June here on Inkstained Wretches, we celebrate Pride Month by cataloging all of the greatest corporate shilling for Pride Month. I think our greatest of all time was Lockheed Martin celebrates Pride Month
with rainbow missiles.
Exactly, like
missiles.
as this Hellfire missile rains down on its target, it does so in an inclusive way. But for me, it's the corporate, the branded corporatization, the flattening out of otherwise interesting things. Which brings us to, you've segued us very nicely to our facile files. And in the facile files, we break down things that should be obvious, that are obvious, but journalists play dumb in order to make a larger point. And you found a really delightful slice of facileness. Please share.
So Slate has a parenting column called Care and Feeding. And the headline on February 28th is, "You will not believe the dumb reason my son gave for refusing to wipe his butt."
Oh, boy.
Then this is an 11-year-old. And you actually will not believe it.
I won't? Because very often I believe it. What is his reason?
When I saw the headline, I realized, quote, "He's stopped wiping his ass because apparently believes that putting anything between his cheeks would make him gay."
Wow. What is going on in this person's house?
And it's signed by Skidding Out of Control. And I actually really appreciate that. So
Slate. Oh, Slate.
What I love about this is that what seems possibly the story here is who is feeding this homophobic stuff to our boys. What's obvious is that 11-year-old boys are disgusting.
Yeah.
11-year-old boys will make up the dumbest reason for
Yes.
why they're disgusting. 11-year-old boys will talk about their butts and gayness in disgusting and
Being
facile
gross.
terms.
Right.
Trying to make that into anything other than 11-year-old boys being gross is this bizarre mental gymnastics.
Well, what it leads me to believe is that no one should have children then, Tim, because it's gross.
It is gross.
Do you have anything to say against the fact that no one should have children because they're gross?
I thought about that question for a while, and so I wrote a book on it.
Yes,
Chris.
please hold it up.
So this
Let
is a
the
book.
internet see it.
This is my new baby.
Yes.
I've had 6 human babies, and this is my newest hardcover book baby. Family Unfriendly is the title, and the baby bust going on in American culture. You know, the birth rates are falling, the number of babies born. And some people think it's purely economic, and some people think that we're having fewer babies just because women finally have a choice. That's the main story in a lot of the mainstream media. And my argument is that there are actually cultural reasons that people aren't having babies.
I was lucky to get to see you gave a talk here at AEI on the book, and the statistic that struck me, that stayed with me, was the gap between public opinion researchers have on a longitudinal basis been asking the question, how many kids what's the best number of kids?
Yeah.
What's the ideal number for people in the abstract to have? What's the best number of kids for a family? How many kids do you yourself want to have? And then comparing that to how many kids there are.
And in fact, how many do you intend to have?
Yes.
And so the ideal is 2.7 children, and actually climbing. The intended is down around 2, and those two lines used to track one another, the intention and the ideal. The actual birth rate is below 1.6. And so, again, my argument is that it's a cultural problem. It's called family unfriendly because I'm arguing we have a family unfriendly culture. And I think a lot of folks just think, oh, this has got to just be economics, or there's got to be one big policy fix.
How do we explain the delta? Why are people? I can understand, and I think the numbers hold this up, that there was always a little underperformance, that people were not having as many kids as they intended to have, and there's obvious reasons for that. There are fertility problems, and life happens, and all that stuff. Yeah. But what is the explanation for the size
growing,
of the gap?
The growing gap is what I try to explain, because again, there's always been one, and it started growing with the Great Recession, and it kept going, which is why I say it can't just be economics. I think that for one thing, parenting culture has gone insane. We're expected to drive our kids to travel lacrosse tournaments in Delaware.
That's a big thumbs down.
We're expected to helicopter our kids everywhere. The media is constantly telling us your kid's going to get kidnapped if he walks across the street alone. But also, it's our cultural values. Once it became, oh, well, you chose to be a parent, that's your thing, both conservatives and liberals will say, well, there's no societal duty to help you raise your kids. That cuts against all of human history, and it's a family unfriendly culture, and I think that's really what explains it. And so then you get the millennials, younger millennials and Gen Z, they don't even think that society is going to help them raise kids. They think if anybody's going to help, it's either going to be the marketplace or the state. So they either call for socialism or they say nobody can afford to have a kid.
And having dislocated families, right?
Not living your grandma.
And I have not yet read Family Unfriendly, but your previous book, Alienated America, explains to me a lot of what has happened in American families, because as we become alienated from our own family, we have a less fecund space in which to start our own families, right? That if we aren't connected to community, to where we worship, where we live, the extended family, all of that creates a fertile space in which new families can start. Whereas if you're living separated from the world, it looks like a much bigger task.
Yeah, one of the chapter titles in Family Unfriendly is "It Takes a Village to Raise a Child." I got that one from this wise woman.
That's right. It was I think it was an African
proverb. Yeah.
An African proverb. That's right. So good. Pick it up. I'm looking forward to reading it. Okay, now even more facile than the hygiene problems of 11-year-olds. Is this piece from the AP. Okay, now you may or may not know, no one listening has probably been able to escape the tragic news of the student at the University of Georgia, Laken Hope Riley, who was murdered while she was out on a run in Georgia. And you've heard about it because it has become a incendiary political point, because the number one issue in America today politically, as we talked about at the beginning, is about the border and is about migrants. And this promising, charming seeming young woman was murdered by an illegal immigrant who was not just an illegal immigrant, but who had been in police custody for other crimes and had been let go. And then he killed this woman. And I will stipulate both arguments. One, if he wouldn't have been here, he wouldn't have killed her, which is true, and that is true. It is also true that lots of non-illegal immigrants kill lots of people.
Yes.
And this is a human problem, not a problem with people from, where did he come from? I want to be correct. I apologize. This is not a problem of people. Well, it's not in this article. You know why it's not in this article? And this is why it's in the Facile Files? Because it never mentions this controversy, right? You could say whatever we had. I got from Andrew Sullivan a great phrase that we use here very often, which is the "to be sure" paragraph.
Yes.
And the "to be sure" paragraph is what you put in your piece when you say, now, some people say that actually dogs are the best, but we know why that's not true. So the at least acknowledging the other point of view. Here's what the AP wrote. The killing of a nursing student out for a run highlights the fears of solo female athletes. I don't think that's what it highlights.
No.
I don't think that I think this story highlights a lot of things, but the fact that the AP managed to make it into a story about feminism or the story about the threat that women face, which I'm not pretending that they don't. I do not pretend here that male college students and female college students face
the same threats,
equivalent risks to their personal safety when they exercise outdoors. I'm not saying that. But to make this about that is you're turning the ratchet one, like it's a story about gender, but then to totally omit in the entire article that you wouldn't throw in a paragraph where you said, now, other people say that this is a story about illegal immigration. And I read the piece. I kept waiting to get to the paragraph in the piece where they would say, now, look, we know that this is and it wouldn't have even detracted from the message they were trying to put in the piece.
Their "to be sure" line was, crime statistics indicate that these types of attacks are rare.
Yeah.
So it's a story. It's something to worry about. But they're actually scaring people to some extent more. They're not providing sort of, there's some little paragraph on helpful tips or something. Tell your friends, run with others if you can, yada, yada. But that they made this story. And, so then there was a 2-year-old murdered in Maryland, and one of the guys arrested for the murder actually was a guy who was entered illegally, was arrested for theft, and then when the immigration officers tried to get him, Montgomery County said no.
Oh, no.
Arrested 6 months later for theft. Immigration officers tried to get him. Montgomery County said no.
Oh, no.
And then he's involved, allegedly, in this killing of a 2-year-old. And so that is a story that's absolutely about sanctuary counties. And,
totally.
And the county is now sort of instantly, as soon as this guy was arrested, they're trying to backtrack. So there is a story to be told there. But if you refuse to tell those stories, then somebody says, I know this has to do with immigration, is going to listen to the people who are trying to convince you that every immigrant is a murderer and a rapist.
Back to where we were about Trump saying things that are racist in the neighborhood. If everything is the worst and must be obliterated, if the end zone says end racism, you can't talk about actual racism because everything just has to be flattened out and obliterated. Speaking of flattened out and obliterated, our friend Taylor Lorenz. I don't know. Are you familiar with the ways of Taylor Lorenz?
I am familiar with the work of Taylor Lorenz.
She is a Wretches all-star. She's in the Hall of Fame. New York Times reporter who went to the Washington Post and has sown discord and dis-ease in each setting that she has been in by attacking her employers and being generally noxious. She has exceeded even her normal capacity for being facile by there's a TikTok account, Libs of TikTok,
Yes.
And Taylor Lorenz has been on a crusade about libs of TikTok. And, of course, much like the great sage Cat Turd, the targeting of these voices has only elevated their status and brought them to heroic standing for Tucker Carlson or whatever. It makes them heroes. But Taylor Lorenz is going to explain to you how the libs of TikTok became a powerful presence in Oklahoma schools. And she goes to get to the bottom of how Oklahoma schools became a hellscape of right-wing thinking because of libs of TikTok. I hate to break it to Taylor Lorenz, but Oklahoma is a very conservative state. It is very conservative state. It is the buckle of the Bible Belt. It is not a Lorenz-facing space. And I'm sure there's truth in it. I'm sure the radicalization of people online, I'm not saying it's not true. What I am saying is it's not TikTok that's making Oklahoma anti-trans. Oklahoma did not need TikTok. They weren't like, well, we're good with all this. I don't know what's going on. And then libs of TikTok put a post up and they're like, hold on a second. Wait a minute. I have a problem with this.
Well, there's a couple things going on here. One, sort of my criticism of libs of TikTok would be I referred earlier when talking about my book to the view that abductions of children happen every day.
Yeah.
Because the media puts that idea in people's head. So nut picking is the practice of going online, finding the worst instance of the people you hate, and broadcasting it. And so you can be confident that libs of TikTok has gotten almost everybody who's as bad as what's portrayed on libs of TikTok, but it makes the impression that that is every public school teacher. And so that would be my criticism. I write about, I try to have a threshold of who I'm going to criticize for being a crazy, transgender or whatever. It's got to be somebody who has actual power.
Yes.
Not one random
Not punching
teacher.
down.
But why is libs of TikTok so powerful? Why are so many schools putting in policies about what books are in their hall? It's because 3 years ago, nobody was trying to do this.
Right.
The left is advancing teachings that nobody has ever encountered. So it's not that there's some rising tide of anti-transgender, principles. It's that principals never had to deal with somebody trying to put a book in their library that said that there's the 3-year-old boy might actually be a girl.
And the part to whole fallacy, the idea that these what tend to be very isolated incidents that aren't really on both coming from the backlash and the lash, which tend to be very isolated things and happening in small numbers. The trans debate generally is the best example of this. I don't know how many people suffer from gender dysphoria in these United States, and my heart is with them, and the struggle that they have experienced is real. But we're not talking about a statistically significant number in the population. Certainly, we are not talking about a number that is anyway reflected in the coverage. And there is a prurient kind of thing with this, which is it's another way to talk about sex, much like AI coming for the jobs of prostitutes. It's salacious, it's about sex, it's about this stuff, it's controversial. And so whether it's libs of TikTok or Taylor Lorenz, they run to it because there's clicks there, because there's action there, and because it's kind of sexy. And that's making us dumb. Speaking of making us dumb, I've very much enjoyed the coverage around what's the name of it's Smirnoff, the informant, the informant who it turns out was lying, or the FBI says was lying to the FBI the whole time. And watching, we'll put it in the show notes, but watching Maria Bartiromo on Fox and others try to keep that James Comer and Jim Jordan were we're as much victims in this as anybody else. There's been a decent dose of facility in trying to keep this story afloat. I guess I would put it this way: the Republican effort, or the effort by some Republicans and some shows and some right of center outlets to inflate the corruption of Hunter Biden and Jim Biden into a massive that Joe Biden is manipulated was almost bound to disappoint.
Yep.
Was almost bound to disappoint. And then when you miss and don't deliver on Joe Biden getting sacks of cash, you are left with, much like with Donald Trump, you're like, well, did he like shoot a black guy or something? Does he own slaves? And it's like, no, he told kind of a racist joke. He said like kind of a racist thing.
And I mean, there was a story to tell that if you had slightly lower ambitions, you could tell, which is that Hunter Biden, that Joe Biden's defense and the Democrats, the Congressman Goldman, that their defense of Hunter Biden was that he was pretending to sell access to his father.
Yep.
And that so he was charging millions of dollars to people.
Yep.
And defrauding them and pretending to sell access. And Joe Biden publicly says, my son did nothing wrong. And he won't say, I kept on trying to stop him from doing it. That Biden tolerated his son doing this corrupt practice.
Yes.
And I mean, I think it was great to look into. Is there evidence that Biden actually did favors for Hunter's clients?
Last week, we told the story last week here. The Washington Post did a great piece on Jim Biden selling access to trial lawyers when his brother was in the Senate, and that they had the tobacco settlement, and that they knew who to hire. They hired Joe Biden's brother because it would be, and that's something you and I have seen.
That they were enriched by their proximity to power.
Yep.
And so the true corruption is if the person with the governmental power did an act to benefit the people who paid them.
Right.
Trust me, I looked for this.
This
the
is
committee
his
looked
gig.
for this.
Yes.
Everybody's looked for it. There's no smoking gun with Biden yet. So his family running a corrupt influence peddling racket and Joe Biden saying, my son did nothing wrong. That's a story.
Yes.
Somehow that wasn't enough of a story for these Republicans on the committee.
That's exactly right. So when you ratchet things up and when you sensationalize things in the media, and this is the story of the Russian collusion investigation.
Yeah.
Right? There was plenty of stuff in there that you're like, oh, gross. That's pretty gross. But when you say Donald Trump was a puppet of the Kremlin and da-da-da, and then you're like, oh, I guess they did. I guess they didn't prove it. I guess they didn't get there.
I used to go on Morning Joe regularly then, and I said, I think the story here is that Donald Trump has a real unsavory fondness for Vladimir Putin and other strongmen. And the hate mail I got was, isn't it obvious that they have compromat on him, that he's in the pocket of them? I was like, I just told a story about why this guy's totally unfit to be president of the United States.
Not good enough.
But it wasn't good enough for you guys.
It's not good enough. Okay, last in our facile file, Washington Post again with some all-star faciles this week. The economy is roaring. Immigration is a key reason. Now, again, true, right? It is true. And to the point of Tim's book, we need lots of immigrants in the United States.
We need people.
We need tons and tons of immigrants. We need 1 million immigrants a year in the United States just to keep the economy growing and going, right? That's what we need because of low birth rates, because of other things, because of the Ponzi scheme of the entitlements. We need lots of new Americans. And what this piece by three bylines, Rachel Siegel, Lauren Gurley, and Merrill Cornfield, is not wrong. The piece is not wrong, but it is facile because they say immigration has propelled the U.S. job market farther than just about anyone expected, helping cement the country's economic rebound from the pandemic as the most robust in the world. So you could write an interesting piece here where you say, but it's complicated because migrants fleeing the Central America are pouring into the United States, disrupting American cities. There are crime problems attached to it, and it's about trade-offs.
Mm-hmm.
And we need that. And you would talk to the economist who said, and we need more legal immigration, and that's why we should blah blah blah. And this is why and here's the plan to do these visas in this way. But basically, what this says is Republicans are yelling about the unsecure border and mass migration flowing into the United States in a alarming fashion. But don't you know, immigrants are helping the economy.
Well, that there's an upside to something.
Yes.
That's what they're saying. There is an upside to
Yes.
this thing without ever saying, alongside the downsides.
Yes.
And there are times that you need that story of, well, actually, there's an upside to this, but to present the upside without any acknowledgement of the downside, except that that's, racist caterwauling, then that it's not a story to say this phenomenon has an upside.
To be sure, it is facile. And this, I include from the Wall Street Journal in protest, the health menace inside your sandwich. And it is a lengthy diatribe against processed meats. And I'm here to tell you, processed meats are delicious. Don't let them fool you.
Eating my children's leftover chicken nuggets and hot dogs is one of the great joys of fatherhood.
In other news, this is for Eliana. We would be remiss if we did not include the controversy. Speaking of food related, Adam Rubenstein, however you roll, we're for you. I was a heretic at the New York Times piece in the Atlantic about his experiences. He was the guy who edited the Tom Cotton op-ed that kicked off that launched Barry Weiss into the stratosphere, that led to the sacking of the editorial page editor, did all this stuff. And so this man shares in a piece at the Atlantic what his experiences were like there. And what the editorial page editor's name is?
James Bennett.
James Bennett. Sorry, James Bennett. But we've heard from James Bennett. We heard from Barry Weiss. We've heard from others at the Times. And Rubenstein here gives his account. And it's interesting, worth reading. It's fine. But what caught the attention of many was an anecdote he told in which he said that in a icebreaker session with other staffers, they said, "What's your favorite sandwich?" And he said the spicy chicken sandwich from Chick-fil-A. And he recounted how he was then denounced
by the HR
representatives for, you can't say that, they're anti-gay. And he said, well, I wasn't talking about their the CEO's policy and donations as it relates to gay marriage. I just like the sandwich. I don't know, blah, 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 blah. The response to this from another favorite figure from this telecast, this broadcast is Nicole Hannah-Jones.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Nicole Hannah-Jones wants the documents from the Atlantic. She says it never happened. And she wants the Atlantic to provide. The Atlantic even came forward and said, we did fact check this story.
Mm-hmm.
We did fact check it. We talked to people who verified it. And Nicole Hannah-Jones says it's a fraud. The story is fake. And she wants the answers. Now, not to be mean, but for Nicole Hannah-Jones, whose central and most famous work was stealth edited, then basically defeated, right? The axis on which the 1619 Project turned was that the motivating cause
of the
American Revolution was to avoid the perpetuation of slavery, or to maintain the perpetuation of slavery. And that when it was like, no.
If one wrong detail upends a broader work.
Yes, if that has ever been
Nicole
true.
Hannah-Jones would be the biggest victim of that rule. And yeah, so the one detail was just a fun anecdote for Rubenstein to start this story with. But I was just shocked at how many journalists just said, you're lying.
You're lying.
You and I are used to like random people on Twitter thinking that we like made up a source and that that's a normal thing to do. And we have to go back and be like, that's literally a psychopathic thing to do, to make up a source. So you know the names of the people who do that because that's psychopathic behavior to do that. And our regular readers think that happens. It was journalists, a handful, not just Nicole Hannah-Jones. I don't remember the other names, but there was 4 or 5 of them who just were like, lol, this obviously never happened. Not because they were in the room, but because they just assumed
people aren't like that.
He was just lying. But why wouldn't people be like that? Like, wouldn't Nicole Hannah-Jones boo somebody who was eating
and
Chick-fil-A?
Especially when it was Chick-fil-A was controversial. I remember a piece, I think it was in the New Yorker, about the moral anguish of New Yorkers as a Chick-fil-A opened in Manhattan. That it was like, I love the chicken, I hate the politics, I don't know what to do. Okay, sports section, it's time. I love this piece. This could have been my favorite, but you'll see that I have a much more. I'm practically a sex worker when it comes to my favorite this week. But this is a wonderful piece in the Wall Street Journal the MLB team that trains with a stuffed hippopotamus. It is the beginning of baseball season. We are in spring training now. You're a Mets fan, do I recall
Yes,
that correctly?
I am. For all my sins.
I am a Cardinals fan. The Cincinnati Reds, I believe it must be the Reds. The pink and gray stuffed hippo had been gathering dust all winter inside J.R. House's garage. What great West Virginian J.R. House, I will point out, garage when it received a surprise call up to the big show. Haley the hippo was required at Cincinnati Reds spring training. House, the Reds' third base coach and former catcher in the majors, took a look at his daughter's pool toy and saw a low-tech solution for one of the trickiest parts of preparing for a season. His players were going to practice tagging a hippopotamus. It's pretty dirty and gross, and my wife tries to throw it away every offseason, House says, but I won't let her because we keep using it. It's a sweet, it's just, I love this piece, and good for you, Wall Street Journal.
So they tie basically a rope around the end of the hippo, and then they yank it down the third baseline.
Yep.
So the catcher can tag the hippo.
It's large enough, it's heavy enough.
Because sending full-grown adult men sliding full speed at a catcher again and again and again in spring training could result in somebody being injured.
Now, the other thing is that Cincinnati's home to two of the top real hippos in the game.
Is that right?
So at the Cincinnati Zoo, they have Fiona and Fritz. And I like Fiona, but I'm a Fritz guy, I got to tell you, because Fritz is a great name for a hippopotamus. So Cincinnati is really lining up over the target with a hippopotamus-themed spring training story and being in town with two great hippos.
I have to say the most famous collision at home plate in baseball history was at the hands of a Cincinnati Red, Pete Rose.
Yes.
In an All-Star game.
Yes.
Which shouldn't be that competitive.
When you're not supposed to go that hard.
He came around third base trying to score, and back in the day, you could just, for the catcher only, you could just run him over. You could basically be a linebacker going after a quarterback. And if you succeeded in knocking the ball out of his hands, you were safe. During the All-Star game, Pete Rose did that, and he, I believe, ended the career of Ray Fosse.
I think that's
the catcher. And so the most famous collision at home, maybe that's burned in the minds of Cincinnati Reds. So they send a hippo home instead.
He may not be in the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame, but Pete Rose is definitely in the Hillbilly Hall of Fame. He is definitely in the hillbilly community, deeply respected. Okay, moving quickly on to our style section. I did not know about this person. I did not know that this person existed, but a very interesting piece about how by Max Tanney at Semaphore, why Trump and Kennedy are chasing Jessica Reed Krause. And Jessica Reed Krause is an influencer who has developed a bunch of political opinions, and this is was a totally fascinating piece to me about this Instagram influencer who is become a sought-after target of Trump and RFK Jr., and I've said it before, I'll say it again. The reason I think that RFK Jr. as the Libertarian nominee, if they can work out that merger, is dangerous to Trump is for this very reason. This demographic, these are the people, celebrity-loving, kind of kooky, into that stuff. I think the Venn diagram there has a lot of overlap. Okay? I'll just complain. If we're complaining, I'll just complain. If I'm complaining, I'll just keep complaining. The best carry-on luggage. Wirecutter from the New York Times put this piece out, and I have a bad opinion, which is I hate roller bags. I will use a roller bag. I'll do it if it's a big trip. I have a huge from Mission Mercantile that's a great bag, and I could fit one of my children, not the eldest, but I could still fit the youngest child in this bag, and it does have wheels on it. And if I'm going someplace for a week or I'm taking everybody, I'm not without sin here. But that's a checked bag. It does have wheels on the bottom, but it's a checked bag. I hate the little roller bag
for the overhead.
Now now I'll be gendered. I will compound my error. I understand that, well, not just for women, but for people who don't want to lug around a big bag, a roller bag makes a lot of sense. I get it. But for me, the correct carry-on luggage is a suit bag that goes over my shoulder. That's just me. That's where I'm at. I'm an old-fashioned person, and I'm crabby about it. So this is me being crabby.
I agree. I will just add a relevant piece of advice since we're AEI fellows. Now, this is something that travel advice that came from Scott Gottlieb, former FDA commissioner.
And that guy, I bet no one travels better than Scott Gottlieb.
And so his advice was, he told me, he said, Tim, I know you want to travel wearing your suit so that you don't have to pack it up, but sitting down on those airplane chairs, up and down, putting in all those miles, you're going to wear a hole through the pants seat. And sure enough, one day I was at the American Conservative dinner.
Nice.
And as I got up to walk away, I sort of felt a little breeze coming in. I realized I had worn a hole in my one good suit because I used to wear it on the airplane.
The back door was open.
Do not wear your nice suit on an airplane.
I do sometimes, but I also am willing to pay the price in travel of, and something else you don't know about me that also makes me the worst. I went through a period where I was not wearing a necktie to travel, and I would just wear a sport coat. And I was once so ashamed of myself because I encountered George Will at the boarding area for a flight, and I was like, "Look at my bare neck, like an animal, like a peasant. Here I am,
like a sex worker."
Yeah, exactly, like an AI replaced sex worker. Look at me. So I'm the worst in many ways. Okay, is it? And we'll just answer this question quickly. Is it ever okay to have an 8 a.m. meeting? This is a piece from the Wall Street Journal. I say, if you are doing it virtually, maybe, and people can do it from home.
I think 8 a.m. is if you don't have to commute in, it's a reasonable time to be virtually up. Or if you're conducting a raid, like if you're a military officer,
that's fine.
Then
you could even go 7:30.
Yeah.
You could even start if you've got to kill Osama bin Laden. You can even go earlier. Okay, now it's time for our obsessions of the week. This is where we break down the stories that we can't get out of our heads. And Tim, we're going to start yours. We're going to listen to something somebody said about Jesus freaks.
I've talked with a lot of experts on this, and I've seen it myself with my reporting, Michael, which is that the base of the Republican Party has shifted, right? Remember when Trump ran in 2016, a lot of the mainline evangelicals wanted nothing to do with the divorced, real estate mogul who had cheated on his wife and with a porn star and all of that, right? So what happened was he was surrounded by this more extremist element. You're going to hear words like Christian nationalism, like the new apostolic reformation. These are groups that you should get very schooled on because they have a lot of power in Trump's circle. And the one thing that unites all of them, because there's many different groups orbiting Trump, but the thing that unites them as Christian nationalists, not Christians, by the way, because Christian nationalists is very different, is that they believe that our rights as Americans, as all human beings, don't come from any earthly authority. They don't come from Congress. They don't come from the Supreme Court. They come from God. The problem with that is that they are determining men are determining what God is telling them. And in the past, that so-called natural law is, it's a pillar of Catholicism. Catholicism, for instance, it's been used for good in social justice campaigns. Right. Martin Luther King evoked it in talking about civil rights. But now you have an extremist element of conservative Christians who say that this applies specifically to issues including abortion, gay marriage, and it's going much further than that, as you see, for instance, with the ruling in Alabama this week. That judge is connected to that dominionist faction in talking about a lot of other issues, including surrogacy, IVF, sex education in schools. There's a lot in addition.
So I take it you agree with that?
That she tries to say that people who believe our rights come from God are a special sect of Christianity is an amazing level of ignorance. And that, obviously the Declaration of Independence.
We were endowed by somebody. I don't know who it was. We're looking into it.
And so, but I think there's really actually something very pernicious going on here, which is an effort, and they always say, oh, well, it's not all Republicans, it's just a MAGA Republicans I'm coming after. It's not all Christians, it's just those who believe in natural law and those who believe that our rights come from God. They are Christian nationalists. Heidi Presbala, the commentator making that little monologue there, she obviously thinks that Christian nationalists are dangerous. She says that.
Right.
And Christian nationalism has no place in an American democracy. But her definition of Christian nationalism includes most Christians, all mainstream Christian teaching, a lot of Jewish people, a lot of Muslim people.
Right.
Most religious people in America, in her mind, unless if they hold any view that she rejects, like a pro-life view, they are they have no place in American democracy. So it's actually a slightly fascistic term to justify her trying to say religion has no place in the public square.
And you are one of the things that I like about you, one of the things that I think makes you a good journalist. You have lots of progressive friends.
Oh, yeah.
You live, I don't know what your neighborhood's like now, but I assume it's not a Trump.
We have Ukraine flags, and in this house, we believe yard signs in our neighborhood. Yes.
And you grew up in New York City, and you are very conversant and very knowledgeable about how secular, humanistic atheists think and feel about things. You are friends with people like that. You engage with them in a respectful way. It makes your writing better. It makes you a better journalist because you are able to see the world through other people's eyes. And I don't want to come down too hard on Presbilla because I don't know. I simply don't. I don't know what her body of work fully reflects. But when I heard this, I just thought, oh, you don't know anybody.
No. And it's a advantage that conservatives in the media have.
Yeah.
That it's impossible to have your job or my job without having liberal friends. And again, you said I grew up in Greenwich Village. I lived in Montgomery County. I live in Fairfax County now. I went to a liberal arts college. We were blessed with being exposed to opposing views, which makes it harder for us to hold stupid opinions, makes it easier for us to make good arguments. Not to say I don't hold stupid opinions or make bad arguments, but that she was not blessed by our creator for some reason with interlocutors who can say, actually, no, this idea of natural law, this idea that our rights come from God, it's very normal. This is what it means. It's not the same as Christian nationalism. It's so easy to climb up the liberal media ladder without being exposed to other views. This is one of the things our friend Julie Mason we talked about earlier, she is great about. She absolutely just so frustrated at her liberal journalist friends who have no understanding of the other side.
And if you were about to write a piece about Black Lives Matter and you were going to make broad assertions about what the Black Lives Matter movement is or isn't, it would occur to you, you would say, I should talk to a black person, probably, right? I should probably, part of my work here should be in talking to a black person. And I will call one of my black friends and ask them about this. If she would have had just one Christian or Jewish or Muslim friend to call and say, you take this stuff pretty seriously, right? If she'd have picked up the phone, if she'd have called Yuval Levin and said, Yuval, my man, what's going on with this whole our rights come from God? And the next thing you know, she'd be taken away. She'd be riding a magic carpet into Edmund Burke. It would be a whole great thing. She'd be back at City of God, City of Man, talking about Augustine of Hippo before she knew it, and it would be great. She'd walk away with a different understanding of Aristotle. It would have been lovely. But instead, she saw a thing and she connected the dots because she lives in a vacuum. Speaking of which, I will be brief with my obsession as time runs on. But my obsession is I have the most solipsistic both obsession and favorite item this week because they're both about me. And I just wanted to put in here the piece that I wrote for the Dispatch, Llamas, Life Online and Lessons Learned, about this week was the 9-year anniversary of the llamas who ran amok in Sun City, Arizona. And it was a delightful day in the TV biz because we heard on Twitter, hey, these llamas, look at these llamas. And the whole national media stopped in a very pleasant moment on a February afternoon. And we watched these llamas, Cognita and Laney, the llama, one black llama, one white llama, helicopters overhead like they were OJ and Al Cowlings. And it was great. And it's a piece about what we learned since then. And Megan McArdle, the great Megan McArdle, has done lots of good work on this. Lots of people have done good work on this. I'm not saying anything new, but I am saying that as journalists, and this is why I included here, as journalists, this is a good moment as we're about to plunge into the general election, what we've learned about what life online is like, what we're like, and basically my assertion is, when social media arose, so 2015, when we get to 65% of Americans who adults have social media accounts, there were two particular groups of obsessive users of social media, particularly Twitter. Elites, journalists, corporate people, those people. And then at the other end we're weirdos, But then there were other weirdos at the other end, people who in a different age would have only been allowed to say things to annoy their family members, annoy people at bars, write letters to the editor, call in to talk radio shows. And they suddenly have a platform. And what happened was we became obsessed with each other, right? We, out of a very small population of people really, right? Elites became obsessed with obsessive weirdos, and obsessive weirdos fixated on elites. And in this lumpy distribution of social media addicts, I guess the simplest way I can put it is social media distortion of our politics did not happen to us in the media. It happened through us in the media. We were accelerators, vehicles, and one of the tropes that we have on this show is we talk about the took to Twitter phenomenon, where you see a piece where you would have actually enjoyed this one. A couple weeks ago, Newsweek had an article, conservatives are furious about an ad in the Super Bowl about Jesus washing people's feet. And I thought, that seems odd that there would be so many conservatives upset. And then I opened up the article. What was in the article? A bunch of tweets.
Yeah.
It was just a bunch of tweets. It was just a lazy collection of tweets from weirdos. And it's like, boy, conservatives really hate the idea of Jesus washing black people's feet. It's like, did anybody call a smart person? Did anybody see if this was a more broad-based phenomenon? No, you just went on social media and did it. So it didn't happen to us. It happened through us.
That's exactly right. I used to, when I was a commentary editor at the Examiner, I used to tell my people, if you want to write about libs behaving badly, it can't be just libs on Twitter.
Right.
It's usually they should be behaving badly on TV or in print.
Yes.
And the only exception I'll give for the people behaving badly on Twitter is if they are people who also appear on
exactly.
TV.
That we can.
But even that, like in certain times, I'm like, no, I don't want Joy Reid's bad tweets.
Keith
I want
Olbermann, you won't believe what Keith Olbermann said, why he won't wipe his bottom. Okay, this brings us to Eliana's favorite time of the week, which is reader mail. Okay, here we go. This is from Nick Newfield in Kansas City, Missouri. Hola, Chris. You mentioned on the last episode of the recent trend of churches I should have known I would get in trouble for this. A trend of churches to rebrand, rename themselves to seem hip and fresh. Hit a little close to home, particularly the example you proffered. In the span of maybe 5 years, I was a member of a half-century-old Baptist church that rebranded itself Graceway and moved to another 150-year-old Baptist church. The church shortly rebranded itself Connection Point. So your hypothetical Grace Point managed to deftly skewer both. Perhaps an AI hipster church name generator can be built to at least increase the variety and uniqueness of church names. Love the show and your work on the Dispatch. Mr. Newfield, Tim is a intense. When I said that he was full of potatoes and incense inside, I meant that he is.
It was not hippie incense.
No, I meant that Tim is a intentional, devoted, serious Catholic, in the traditional mold, and means it. And I am not. I am enthusiastic through a half a millennia of Protestantism.
It's a very long protest, Chris.
Yes, we've been at it. You guys are you're still in there. You're still hanging around. We're looking for indulgences. But I say all that to illustrate this point. As long as, and this is not a theological podcast, but with Eliana not here, we'll take just this quick liberty to say, for me, as long as Christ is the head of the church, get down how you want to get down. You call it Grace Point, you call it, Churchy McChurch face, whatever you want to call it. If you're down with the Nicene Creed and Christ is the head of your church, you can have a cappuccino bar at your church. You can do anything. You can have video screens. You can have a drum kit. You do you. It's all good for me.
I'm happy. Any name, all the way from St. Athanasius to the Most Precious Blood. Any one of those.
Anything.
Fine.
You're fine. You're real wide open. Okay. Dear Wretches, this is from Matthew L. in Manhattan. The NYT's acerbic trashing of the recent Dior Yves Saint Laurent show in Paris is right up your alley. Probably hoping Eliana was here, weren't you, Matthew? We'll never see Chris in French fashion. No. And probably not Eliana either. By the way, today, for those just listening, I'm dressed like the manager of a medium quality country club somewhere. It's not. I definitely look like I'm on staff today.
I was thinking a high quality buffet restaurant.
Okay, I'll take that. Right, the chocolate fountain. We'll never see Chris in French fashion, and probably not Eliana either. At least not like this. But the clickbait head and the closing graph merit your attention. Let's see. I'll give you the headline first. Oh, you did it. You did it. New York Times Fashion Review. Breasts, everywhere. Saint Laurent and Dior offered two different versions of women's liberation. Neither was convincing. Breasts everywhere. Okay, women want to feel like a walking brand advertisement as much as they want to stroll around flashing their knockers to the world. It's easy for me to give lip service to empowerment and liberation, tempting to use it as a marketing tool, but harder to define what it might actually look like. At least today, versus sometime in the last century, maybe, hopefully, a designer will come up with a solution. That's the job, after all, but sure it isn't this. Matthew, you provided there could not be a better way for us to get to the closing portion of the show as someone selling sex by talking about how people are selling sex. It's a New York Times headline with a comma in it. It's fashion. You got it all. Matthew, you've done it all. Good for you. Which, of course, brings me to my favorite time of the week, which is the kicker where we say something nice. We are sure to say something nice, and I lead by example, and I am the worst, truly the worst, and did not mean for it to work out this way. But on Sunday at 10 o'clock Eastern Time, I will, in a very dubious series of choices made by the executives at News Nation, anchor the first episode of The Hill Sunday with Chris Stirewalt, which is a public affairs. I do like that they call it a public affairs show. It feels tonier, feels like my chocolate fountain is a little more lavish, that the buffet spread is a little, that there's chilled lobster tail on the buffet that I'm welcoming you to. But we're going to include a link in the show notes. And I would just say, we're not going to have very large viewership. And I don't usually do this. But please, you figure out where you can watch it. And please watch it so we can try to put a little number up so that we can try to make it success, so that I do not make the regret that my bosses will surely feel for having me be the extremely poor man's Tim Russert will not be as tragic as possible. So there, I said it. I feel bad, but I want you to know I feel bad about saying it. You, on the other hand, have a great favorite item of the week.
Well, first I say I will try to get my family to the 7:30 a.m. Mass.
Do it.
And so
the
that we
kids
can
are going to love me.
They're going to love me. Time to watch Mr. Stirewalt. So just recently was the 93rd birthday of my old boss, Bob Novak, who passed away a little over a decade ago. And so Novak was he was my second boss in D.C. He's what I call my grad school, my journalism school. He was, and hopefully all your listeners know who he was, but he was a columnist for 50 years here in Washington, D.C.
Who was he? Tell them who he was, because Bob Novak is not a singular figure in the sense that throughout history, Washington journalism has had these influential writers and connectors and columnists and opinion people, but he was maybe the last one.
Yeah, so he wrote a column for 50 years. It was Evans and Novak together with Roland Evans for many, many years. And he was on the opinion page, syndicated, but most famously in the Washington Post and the Chicago Sun-Times. He was on the opinion page, but every single column had previously unreported facts.
Yes.
And being a reporter and an opinion writer, the most important thing for me, who I got to work for him near the end of his career, was to see how his reporting changed his mind. So when they started off, their only opinion was that they were in favor of the Vietnam War and they were in favor of the civil rights movement, and they were going to try to be neutral on everything else. Mm-hmm. But after a while, they started to say, taxes are way too high. It's actually really bad. They couldn't avoid those sort of conclusions. He became pro-life. Eventually, he became Catholic. He helped bring me into the Catholic Church. He became anti-war. And I was working for him when the Iraq War started up, and he was called unpatriotic on the cover of the National Review.
Really?
Yeah, Unpatriotic Conservatives was a story that was largely about him being an opponent of the Iraq War. But again, he one of the things he told me, he said, Tim, don't join the conservative movement. He said, join lots of things, but politics should not be one of the things that you
God
join.
bless.
Go out and make up your own mind on all this stuff. And how does he make up his mind? How did he make up his mind? It was by doing reporting, learning facts and telling people facts they didn't yet know. So happy birthday in heaven, boss.
To a Hall of Fame wretch, for a Hall of Fame ink-stained wretch, and what good advice. Stay wretched. Don't get into. Don't try to be cool, and don't try to be part of a movement. Hang out with us. It's fun and it's weird over here, and we make few demands of you. Okay, that is all the news about the news. If you have a story that you want us to talk about, email us at wretches@nebulouspodcast.com and sign up for our newsletter at nebulouspodcast.com. This has been Ink-Stained Wretches from Nebulous Media. It is produced by none other than Colin Chicola. Oh, yes. Find us on iTunes or wherever you get your podcast. Just search for Wretches.